What is going on, y'all? It's JD Pickell. And this is not a hard count. This is not a hard count. This is not your standard 10-minute CFB with JD video. For the season finale of the glorious sport that we all know and love, college football, we are doing a season finale on CFB with JD. We're going to talk the Natty. We're going to get into that. We're going to do a pick, a preview, our own little breakdown, talking about what the keys to the game are. But it's going to be a lot of fun. We're talking much more than that. We also have the state of the Big 12. Put some out on my Twitter, at JD Pickell. Go ahead and follow that if you haven't already. We do a lot on this show that bleeds into that Twitter. But a little mailbag said, hey, tell us your questions. We want to do a mailbag segment. We want to hear from you because, after all, we're the People's Channel. The People's Channel is with the people, for the people, by the people. And so we're going to talk about the state of the Big 12 and address some of your questions, concerns, and comments. But first, we got to give a little love to the Oklahoma faithful, because we have a lot of Oklahoma fans that follow this channel, which is hysterical because we take place in Waco, Texas, which is right down the road from Baylor University. So to all you Sooner faithful, thank you. Y'all have been through it the last 4 months. Like, the last 4 months have been the equivalent to me of like a Netflix documentary series. You talk about from October 9th when Spencer Rattler gets benched all the way until present day when Caleb Williams enters the portal, Dillon Gabriel jumps in. We're just going to go through the sequence of events to catch everybody up because there's been a lot of them. So first off, Rattler gets benched for Williams. They're still 9-0. Like, Spencer Rattler hadn't lost a game that season, or this season I should say, as Oklahoma starting quarterback. Caleb Williams takes over and he's the man. Like, everybody and their mother is just all over Caleb Williams, the Caleb Williams phenomenon, and they get to 9-0, and then they finish the year 10-2. Have a chance to clinch their own spot in the Big 12 title game, and they end up losing, falling short. They're not in the title game. So pretty soon after that, a good, 24 hours later, if even that, Lincoln Riley says deuces. Better weather in USC. Also, allegedly, they're throwing the bank at him, as well as his own private jet, house, all that and the other. Lincoln Riley left. Then you have Bob Stoops take the reins for the interim. And like, he just gave the best introductory press conference for an interim head coach I've ever seen. Brent Venables gets hired. Alamo Bowl win, the passing of the visor from Stoops to Venables. Caleb Williams soon after goes into the portal, which then creates a mass exodus of the transfer portal from Mario Williams to Woods. We could go down the list here of all the guys that have left Oklahoma even before Caleb Williams with Rattler and Stogner. It's been a mass exodus. And then hours later, notice the theme here, hours are sort of the metric of time in which things are happening. Like, very, very, it's not a couple months later you get a new quarterback. It's hours after Caleb Williams jumps into the portal, you get a new quarterback. And Dillon Gabriel flips from UCLA to Oklahoma, which brings us to present day. So if you missed all of the events that had happened leading up to this, you are now up to speed. That has been the saga that has been Oklahoma football as of late. And there's a couple things that need to be addressed here. First and foremost, there have been 4 enormous dominoes that have occurred in the span of those 4 months. Most teams have none. If any team does have a domino that falls, like a head coach gets replaced, or you change quarterbacks, or you have a key player go in the transfer portal, they get like 1 or 2 a year. Oklahoma had 4. 4 dominoes fall, with Riley leaving, Venables being hired, Caleb Williams leaving, Dillon Gabriel transferring in as your new starting quarterback. You can even have a 5th domino in there if you want to consider Spencer Rattler being benched and then getting into the portal. Like, there's been so much that has occurred at Oklahoma. So let's just take inventory and what we have learned and observed and seen from Oklahoma over this time period. First and foremost, let's give credit to Oklahoma because they were decisive every step of the way. A lot of times you have a big-time head coach leave and you just leave a school reeling. Like, schools are just left kind of shocked, open-handed, concerned, in panic mode. Credit Oklahoma. It was a very short time period that occurred from Lincoln Riley leaving to Brent Venables being hired. And they were very decisive. It was, okay, Riley is gone. Let's go get our number 1 guy. Brent Venables, perfect fit, perfect for OU. He's a great face for OU, great face for the program. Could not be a more home run hire for this program. Then you have Caleb Williams, jumps in the portal. No flinch from Oklahoma. Zero flinch. That's all right. Dillon Gabriel, he's our guy. Hours later, boom, got him. No concern, no flinch, no hesitation, no sign of weakness from Oklahoma, and credit to that. Second, the vibe in Norman, from what I can tell, from our own assessment, and from our pulse that I feel like we have on the Oklahoma Sooners, which I think is pretty credible at this point in time, it's very positive. For a team that's lost their starting quarterback, really two starting quarterbacks, and a head coach in the last 4 months, vibe is very positive. And they're, I think, also very much encouraged and excited and appreciative of the way that Oklahoma has handled the Caleb Williams departure. There was never any sort of inclination they were going to cater to Caleb Williams in this whole saga. Because a lot of teams, I think a lot of administrations would have said, Caleb, that's all right. We understand you're still considering us. Take your time. Your spot's here whenever you want it. Oklahoma said, we're Oklahoma. Do you know who commits to us? Do you know what we've done in the last several years? I don't care who's the head coach. Stoops, Riley, doesn't matter. You know how many quarterbacks have come through here and done great things? You want to leave? You're lost. We're going to have Dillon Gabriel. He's waiting right now to come and take your spot. And within an hour, they had his vacancy filled. And so I think the Oklahoma Sooner fans appreciate that. I originally said I think Caleb Williams is someone that the Sooner fans wish well. I might have taken a step too far in saying that. I think they wish him well, but I don't think there's any love lost, if that makes sense. Like, I'm sure they still want the best for him, but there's not any sense of, man, I wish he'd come back. The Sooner faithful are keeping it rolling, and credit to them for that. The brand at Oklahoma will look different under Brent Venables. We can all agree on that. It's not going to be Lincoln Riley. If it was going to be Lincoln Riley, it would have been an internal hire, okay? It would have been an internal hire from his staff, what was left of them, to take the head coaching job. Oklahoma is very content with taking on a new look. And that new look, to my best estimation, will be more physical. It'll be a little more not focused on the defense, because I think the offense is still going to be the selling point and the focal point of this entire team. But they're going to give more attention to the defense. They're going to make it a point to have a good defense. Anytime you hire a defensive coordinator as your next head coach, like we might have done here in Waco with Dave Aranda at Baylor, your team is going to take on that persona and understand, okay, we play defense here. That's just what's coming with Brent Venables. He's not going to be the defensive coordinator. He said that in his opening press conference, but they're going to make it a point to have a defense that's stout. And if you look at the way the conference is trending, you look at the way that it's shifting from, honestly, the beginning of this season, defense is what's the new flavor right now in the Big 12. Mike Gundy, typically an offensive coach, did a great job with Jim Knowles, who's obviously not there anymore, but they did a great job to have a solid defense. Played for a conference title. Dave Aranda and Ron Roberts, one of the best defenses in the country, win the conference. It used to be, hey, 7-on-7, sling it around, go 5 wide. That's not the way it works in the Big 12 anymore. That's not what's going to win you the conference anymore. And so for Oklahoma, I think you should be very encouraged that you have a guy like Brent Venables taking over your football program at this point in time. The brand will look different, but Oklahoma's still going to recruit their guys. There was a lot of panic, I think, early on with Malik Brown decommitting and Malachi Nelson decommitting. It's still Oklahoma. It's still one of the blue bloods of college football. It's still one of the best brands in college football. So it can all just take a deep breath. Oklahoma's not going to sink. They may not be a New Year's 6 team next year. They could be. I think it's too early to talk about that. They may not be a college football playoff team next year. But there are still the pieces, there's still the makeup, there's still the attractiveness of Oklahoma to recruits, and honestly to guys in the transfer portal. We haven't even talked about that yet. They're going to be able to do some things in the portal because of getting a guy like Dillon Gabriel and then having an offensive coordinator like Jeff Lebby. Still a very attractive spot for a lot of guys. Still a very attractive spot for offensive guys, contrary to, I think, what some of the opinions are around the quote-unquote expert circle. One more note I want to make. Credit to the Oklahoma fan base. There has been very little complaining or whining about the way that Caleb Williams left OU. Because the first thing I thought when Caleb Williams announced he was leaving was, oh, there was tampering. And there may very well have been tampering, but there was not a peep on a majority front from the Sooner faithful that they were sensing foul play. The majority sentiment that I understood was Caleb Williams wants to leave. He doesn't want to be here. That's fine. When I think a lot of fan bases would have kind of felt like they got slighted, kind of felt like, hey, somebody came in here, did something against the rules. Again, I don't know if this is true or not. This is the feel I have on it. Somebody came in here, did something against the rules, got in his ear, whether it's an agent, whether it's, God forbid, someone else with another program, and just floated the idea of another school, which, again, is illegal to my understanding. But that hasn't been anything that's been whined about, complained about, or honestly, anyone's been upset about in the Oklahoma circle. So credit to Oklahoma, credit to their fan base, credit to their administration. I'm really excited to see what this program does because for the longest time, Oklahoma's been the top dog in the Big 12. They won the conference 6 years in a row before this year. Now, they've had a mass exodus of personnel, of coaches. They're kind of getting up off the mat. There's nothing more dangerous than a dog that's hungry. Going to have to keep an eye on Oklahoma. So, as I mentioned, the other night, last night, approximately 12 hours ago, we decided to do a live show. And so, us being the People's Channel, we said, well, we got to talk to the people. We got to give a mic to the people and hear what they have to say or want to talk about. And with the following that we have, it is primarily a Big 12 following. I'm great with that. We're in Big 12 country. I would love to continue to grow our show to where we have a more national following. But if we just stick with the Big 12 following for the next 5 years, you won't hear a peep out of me because I love the Big 12 faithful. And so all that's leading up to saying we asked some questions, or we got some questions, I have to say, about the Big 12 conference. And we're just going to kind of break them down. Just you and me, mano a mano. Nothing fancy about it. We're just going to talk about what you want to talk about and get into it. So one of the first questions we got, again, at JD Pical on Twitter. This is from at Lupin Bandit DWM. This question is, what's more likely next season? Everything clicks again and Baylor repeats this year's 12-2 mark, or the other Big 12 teams improve and Baylor goes 8-5? This is a tricky question. I'll start with saying this. It is very difficult to win 12 games. That sounds like an obvious statement. Sounds like kind of commonplace, kind of common knowledge. It's very difficult to do what Baylor did this season. The majority of college football teams will fall closer to an 8-5 mark if they are so fortunate than they would to win 12 games. I'll also say Baylor loses a lot. Baylor loses a lot of talent. Terrell Bernard's gone. He really is the heart and soul of your defense. Jalen Petrie is gone. All-American player on defense. Tyquan Thornton, your deep threat. Abram Smith, who was really the one who carried your offense in a lot of games this year. Not taking anything away from the quarterback position with Shapen and Bohannon, but Abram Smith, in a wide zone offense, carried the rock a good amount of the time. So we'll leave that there. To answer your question, they're my pick to repeat next year and win the conference. Now, whether that looks like 12 wins or whether it's 10 wins or whatever it is to win the conference, my money is on Baylor. And here's why. You remember the COVID year? Of course you do. I mean, how could you forget the COVID year? There were some forgettable things about it. But Baylor's season, they went 2-7. 2 wins in their first year under Dave Aranda. And the sentiment out of a lot of message boards and experts and people that like to proclaim themselves as, football fans. They're not really fans. They just like to make a big fuss about things. It was, he's too soft. He doesn't know how to be a head coach. Look at him. He doesn't talk. He doesn't show any emotion. He's timid. Fast forward the tape. Give him a whole offseason. Get a new staff in there in terms of his offensive personnel. And what are they saying about him now? Man, he is cool as a cucumber. He is so composed. He is stoic. Never flinches at anything. It's the same guy. It's the same guy that was calling the play, what was running the program. Wasn't calling the plays, but he changed the guys that called the plays. Winning fixes everything. Culture, in my opinion, is the key ingredient that leads to winning games, especially winning close games. And Baylor won their fair share of those close games this year. That culture is really one offseason old. They've had one offseason to instill their culture. What's it going to do a year from now? If you have 2 solid offseasons under your belt to get what you want into that program, even more so get your kind of guys into that program. We haven't even touched the kind of guys that are going to be recruited from Dave Aranda. I'm betting on culture. I'm betting on Dave Aranda. And I'm betting on the time that he's put into this program and the time this program has had under him to flourish and lead to good things. So to answer your question, is it 12 wins next year? I don't know. I don't know exactly what the wins will look like next year. But if I had to pick a horse in the Big 12, I'd have a really hard time not picking Baylor this upcoming season. It's a great question. Another question we got, this is from a message board on Sikkim365 who oversees this show. So we don't have any special allegiance to give specific analysis to Baylor or anything like that, but that is the person, or the persons, the powers that be, the governing body, if you will, that oversees the show. So put a mailbag call on there as well. And Baylor Bears 111 asked a very good question. He said, what teams do you think will surprise next year? And so I kind of took this 2 ways. Teams that I think will surprisingly be good and teams that I think will surprisingly be a little bit disappointing. First off, Texas Tech, in the best way, will be a great surprise for a lot of teams next year. I said it. I said it on here. Joey McGuire is the best hire in college football that nobody seems to be talking about. He will have a phenomenal culture, and he will have a phenomenal edge for this team because it may take more than one season, but you're going to start seeing some of the fruits this upcoming year because there's a lot of things already in place in Lubbock. I mean, we were really down on Texas Tech at different times throughout the year, and I kind of scratched my head as to why. I guess it's because there's a lot of good teams already in the Big 12. But they made a bowl game. Their coach got fired when they were in the hunt for a bowl game. So credit to Texas Tech for having a high standard and understanding that they need to act quickly to be able to get their program to where they want it to be, which is the upper tier of the Big 12. But they still have a lot of pieces there. If you watched that bowl game against Mississippi State, that freshman Donovan Smith playing quarterback for the Red Raiders, he did some things. You got Sir Roderick Thompson coming back. There are so many pieces already there in Lubbock. You give them the stability of a guy like Joe McGuire coming in, getting his system in. Also, Zach Kittley. You're telling me if you're an offensive player and you like to score touchdowns, you're a quarterback, you like to throw it around the yard, you're not going to commit to that guy? I think Texas Tech is going to be good next year. I think they'll be a force to be reckoned with in the coming seasons. How quickly that happens, I think, depends on how quickly their staff can get acclimated and how quickly they can get their players to get on board with what they're doing. But don't get it twisted. Joey McGuire is going to be one of the best coaches in the Big 12 in at least 2 years' time, if not next season. So Texas Tech, a team that I think stock is extremely viable right now. If I had money in college football stock, Texas Tech would get a very large portion of that money. Now, the teams that I think will be surprising next year in a negative way, this might be something that other people are on board with as well, so I don't know how much of a surprise it is, but Iowa State is losing a lot. Matt Campbell is a great coach. I have nothing but great things to say about Matt Campbell. I adore the way that he approaches culture and building. I love what he's done in Ames, but they lose so much. Not just from a perspective of guys that have already played. Like they lose, I think, 19 or 20 guys that were already playing. Sheem Young is another guy that jumped in the portal, was a key piece for them at more or less their safety position. A lot of guys that have played. Also, they lose a lot of leadership. The reason that's important, when you have 19 or 20 guys that have been starters on your football team that are returning, those are your lead dogs. Those are your leaders. Now, the benefit there is you have a bunch of leaders on the field at one time. The drawback from that is you have a lot of guys that haven't played and that are now being thrust rather quickly into leadership positions. And so I don't worry about culture as much from a Matt Campbell standpoint. I wonder about culture more so in that locker room in Ames because you have a lot of guys, like I said, that for the first time will be looked to be the alpha dogs. And that's something that I think in a lot of ways you grow into. So this offseason for them will be enormous. Obviously, replacing Brock Purdy, which is impossible to do, but finding a guy to play quarterback in Ames will be very, very important. Replacing Breece Hall will be very, very important. You see what we're saying here? A lot of guys that will be stepping into starting positions for the very first time in Ames. So Would love for them to be good, love for them to be good for the conference, but I wonder a little bit how quickly they can reload and be competitive and be as competitive as they hope to be and have accustomed to being within the Big 12 conference in the coming years. Last question here. This is from Surf Oso. Oso, I believe, is bear in Spanish, but I took French in high school, so I guess we'll never know unless we Google search it. He asks, what hire made you say, huh? And I believe what he's asking is, what hire to you was surprising or confusing or in some way, shape, or form just didn't seem like a perfect fit or was confusing? I think I said confusing twice there, so we're doubling down on confusing. I believe he asked this in a national sense. We're going to keep it within the Big 12 conference because there were so many coaching changes in general. But for me, I think it's Sonny Dykes to TCU. And before you jump all over me for saying this, it is more so a matter of Sonny Dykes leaving SMU that's surprising to me than the way he will fit at TCU. Because I think it's a great get for TCU. You got an offensive coach who's shown that he can build a program, who's shown that he can coach offensive football, which is one of the things that they wanted at TCU. I think it's a great hire for TCU. My question is, if you're Sonny Dykes, why do you leave a school like SMU? And I guess part of this could be financial. I mean, obviously both schools are private, so we don't know exactly the figures that he's getting, and that could be the thing that switches it all. I understand it's a Power 5 school at TCU, but SMU, according to a lot of people, and most notably for me, David Smoke, who works at Sick on 365 as well, and has gone on record saying he believes and has heard that SMU will be joining the Big 12 on the next round of realignment. Why leave a school like SMU? You've built it up already to be a power in Dallas. You've been the best team in Dallas, arguably one of the top 3 teams in Texas. Why do you leave a good thing? And again, I understand the answer here for a lot of you, and maybe the answer for him is money, but you have so much built out, and the potential seems so evident, and the ceiling is so high that I was a little bit surprised for Sonny Dykes that he made the jump to TCU because he's already been at the Power 5 level. He's seen that. He's done that. I went on record very, very vocally and said he's not taking the Texas Tech job, and he didn't. When he didn't take the Tech job, I thought, okay, great, he's staying at SMU. So to answer your question, Surf Oso, it's Sonny Dykes for me, not because of his fit for TCU, but the reason to depart from SMU. Also, he has one of the best young talents in the country in Tanner Mordecai, and behind him, Preston Stone, who's a name that a lot of people will hear in the next 2 years. Guy had offers from everywhere in the country, Alabama. You have an Alabama offer. Where else are you really needing offers from? Alabama, I'm pretty sure Oklahoma offered him. All the Power 5s offered him. Bottom line, he stayed at SMU, and he's going to be a big-time ball player. So the potential to be great at SMU is there, and it's going to be there for a really long time. But in short, my answer to that is Sonny Dykes. So now we're to the part of the show where we're going to preview the biggest game of the year in college football. Yes, of course it is the national championship game. A lot of people on Twitter, when I posed this question, just told me they don't care, which is fine, which is fair. I mean, if you don't care about the SEC football, that's great. But for a lot of our fans, you do care about SEC football, and you do care about who ends up hoisting the national championship trophy at the end of the year. And us, being the college football content channel on YouTube, of course we care as well. And so I'm going to give you my game breakdown. But before I do that, I want to go ahead and mention we're going to hear from you after I give my 2 cents. You can tell me how I'm wrong, tell me how I'm right, whatever you want to say, at 254-339-1122. Would absolutely love to hear from you. I'll put on these dorky headphones right here so I can hear you loud and clear in both of my ear holes, and we'll just chop it up about the beautiful thing that is college football. So go ahead and call in and get in the queue, and we'll keep it rolling. For the game breakdown itself, though, Georgia is favored by 3 points after taking a shellacking in the SEC title game to Alabama, 41-24. That's not a one-score game. That's not a close game. They took them to the woodshed in Atlanta. Now, Georgia is favored by 3 points. So you heard that all correctly. So a lot of people talk about matchups and this, that, and the other, about the X's and O's of it, when they haven't really sat down and watched Alabama and Georgia. That's okay. I know that you have. I know that I have. So we're going to go ahead and talk casually here between the two of us, but not be casual fans. If you understand that reference, that's great. If not, don't worry about it. But we're not casual fans here, but we're going to have a casual conversation. So with all that being said, when I watched this game back, it didn't feel like a 41-24 blowout win by Alabama. To me, there were a lot of things that Georgia did that would be categorized as self-inflicted wounds, meaning Bama didn't do anything special to beat them. Georgia did a lot of things that were boneheaded to beat themselves. You catching my drift? Blown coverages, stupid penalties, what else? Wrong fits on their gaps, not being able to make tackles in space on Bryce Young. A lot of things that in a big-time game you can get jittery and not do well. Some people are throwing out there that Georgia didn't really care about this game. I don't buy that for a second. I think if it's the SEC title game, especially against your former boss and Kirby Smart, you care about that. So we'll keep it rolling from there. But Georgia was up 10-0. They were up 10 points in Alabama. A lot of people forget that. They dominated the 25% first quarter of this game. So what happened is they flinched. They flinched, and like I said, a lot of self-inflicted wounds, a lot of things that hurt themselves that allowed them to fall, not allowed them, I guess allowed Alabama to just kind of take control of the game, and it kind of snowballed from there. It sounds like it felt like, at least to me, that their psyche kind of got down and they weren't able to climb back out of that hole. So that's kind of the lens I'm viewing this through. I think if you were just to go roster to roster, I think Georgia's better. I'm watching the line of scrimmage of this entire game. It's positive Georgia every single time, whether it's the defensive push, whether it's the offensive line pulling around on power or getting that combo block on the inside zone. Georgia is dominating from start to finish. And so what that leads me to believe is Georgia's going to have a chance to win this game. I think it's also fair that Georgia's favored. So without further ado, some of the keys to the game for Georgia, for me, is who's taking the top off this defense. Because Alabama hurt Georgia so many times because they were able to take away the run. I mean, they just knew that Georgia couldn't throw it over their head, and so they stacked the box and said, go ahead and try. We dare you, especially in the second half. They took away anything they would have wanted on the run game. Also, took away the intermediate pass game. So at that point, you're keeping everything in front of you as the Alabama Crimson Tide because you can afford to. There's no reason why you have to honor the deep pass because they're not going to be able to complete it. So my question, like I said, for Georgia, can Brock Bowers stretch the field for you? He's fast. He's really athletic. He's probably, for my money, the best tight end in college football. Do you put him out wide and try to find a matchup and go deep? Is it Ladd McConkey? He's taken the top off the defense once or twice, a lot of it off of play action. But you have to find some way to loosen that box. Because if you're not going to threaten them deep, they're going to stack it and just suffocate you. And you can't have that if you're Georgia. The biggest danger for Georgia in this game is to be one-dimensional against Alabama. Because like I said, Georgia may have the better roster, but it's not that much better to where they can just line up and go toe-to-toe with Alabama and get into a boxing match like that. That's not going to be a good thing for them on the offensive side of the football. To that same token, can you run the football? Can James Cook and Zamir White get going a little bit? Because what happens when Alabama says, okay, we're going to keep our safeties at a decent depth. You've shown that you're going to at least try to throw the ball on us. Can you attack that nickel package like you did in the first quarter of that football game and continue to pound the rock? Or, again, do you fade? Do you settle for those 1 and 2 yard gains and get off of it? Will you commit to running the football, and can you do it somewhat successfully to cause this game to be a matter of physicality? Because if it becomes a physical matchup, I think that it's going to become a little bit more interesting for Georgia. I don't like it to be a toe-to-toe kind of game where they can't be able to throw the football, but can you at least assert your will against Alabama, assert your physicality, and make it a point to where they have to deal with that? Play after play, you have to come tackle James Cook, you have to tackle Zamir White, and can you kind of wear on them? Third, can you ask Stetson Bennett to be the difference maker because he has not played well against Bama in the past? 5 interceptions the last 2 games. Make no mistake about it, Alabama wants this game to come down to them versus Stetson Bennett. That is the hope, and that is what they would like to do. They would like to make him be the one that beats them, and they've proven that. Time and time again, that's their game plan. So for Stetson Bennett, can you answer the bell? For the 3rd time in your career, can you answer the bell and go toe-to-toe with Alabama and find a way to make enough plays to win this football game for your team? Honestly, for your head coach who's trying to beat his former boss for the first time in This will be his 5th try. Stetson Bennett, the game is going to fall on your shoulders at some point in time. It may not be the entirety of the game. It may not even be 3/4 of the game. But there will be some moment, whether it's 3rd and long, whether it's 4th and short, they will ask you to make a play to win this football game. Can you do it? Remains to be seen. Another tidbit here. Can you take away Jameson Williams? There's a lot of questions here, obviously, for Georgia, and a lot of things that I think maybe need to be in play for them to win this football game. Can you take away Jameson Williams? We're going to get to that when we talk more about Alabama, but Jameson Williams, if you remember correctly, absolutely torched Georgia the last time they played. That's bad for business. That's not what you want by any stretch of the imagination. I'm going to throw this in the chat right here, 254-339-1122. Boom. Give us a call and tell us your thoughts. So for Alabama, the keys to the game that I'm looking at are you able to recreate your success you had throwing the football? Because like I said, Georgia blew a lot of coverages, and you got a lot of explosive plays that I don't know will be there this time. Explosive plays are great. When you get them, you take them. But I don't know if there's something you can exactly depend on going forward. Because Bryce Young threw for 420 yards, had 16 yards of completion. Jameson Williams, like I said, well over 100 yards. John Mechie, before he tore his ACL, had 6 catches for 97 yards. Can you find a way to still have that edge? Because make no mistake about it, that was their edge. Nobody really got an edge in the trenches last time they played. It was kind of a stalemate there. Both teams ran for just over 100 yards. Nobody blew it out of the water. Can you find a way to create success throwing the ball? Because that's the edge for Alabama if there is one. They have better playmakers on the outside, and they have that ability to be explosive. I don't anticipate Georgia making those same mistakes they did on the secondary. I don't think they'll be the blown coverages that Bryce Young took advantage of last time around. Can you win your one-on-one matchups defensively? If there's any weakness in this team for Alabama that you have to just put on the bulletin board, it's your secondary. A lot of guys that are really green, really young. I think you have 2 sophomores or 2 freshmen and a sophomore. 3 of your starting secondary are either a freshman or a sophomore. That's going to be really interesting to see. Can Georgia take advantage of that? And for Alabama, can you win those one-on-one matchups? Because they will test that. If Kirby Smart is anywhere near the coach I believe he is, you have to be able to take advantage of that. So finally, can you play patient football offensively? If they take away the explosive play, can you drive? Because like I said, 16 yards of completion. Jameson Williams had a day. They didn't really have to go methodically down the field and just kind of plod their way down the field. This will be the first time for Alabama in this matchup where they will have to take what the defense gives them, play patient football, and let the game come to them. Because I don't anticipate Georgia giving them some of the freebies they gave them last game. So let's just get down to it. Who's our pick? We'd love to hear from y'all, but we're going to give you our pick. I think Georgia wins this game. And I may eat my words. Nick Saban is a 6-time national champion. It'll be 7 if he wins this time against Georgia. He's 7 already, I guess, if you count LSU. But I'm taking Georgia because I don't think that this will be a team that gets beaten twice. I think Stetson Bennett rises to the occasion, and I think the line of scrimmage will be what gives Georgia the advantage in this game. Like I said, last game they dominated, but they couldn't take advantage of it. This time, they're not going to allow Alabama to circumnavigate all of those different ins and outs and different explosive plays they had. They're not going to give them those outs. It's going to be, let's line up in the box, and can you move me against my will? That's not going to be an easy task because you got Jordan Davis lined up over there on the defensive line for Georgia. So really it comes down to who flinches first. Georgia flinched a lot last time. I think they learned from that. I think they're experienced. Like Kirby Smart said in some colorful language, it's our year. It is our year if you're a Georgia Bulldog fan. I got the peaches on me right here for the Peach State. We're taking Georgia to win. I'll go as far to say we take Georgia to cover that 3 points. I really do. I think Georgia's going to line up and shock a lot of people and send the Alabama Crimson Tide home with a loss. So that's it for our first live show. And this is something that I was looking forward to. It's been an absolute blast. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say thank you. Because we started this channel on its own in, what was it? I guess it was September. So it was probably week 2 or 3 of the college football season. And I just want to say thank you because there have been so many of you that have jumped on board and said encouraging things to us, that have supported us, that have given us the freedom and flexibility to be able to do what we're doing. And It is not possible. It is not fun without y'all. This is a 1,000,000% team effort. This is a community that doesn't exist without y'all. And so from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for allowing us to do what we love to do. This is Armstrong Sims and Jack McKenzie making the magic happen and doing all of the heavy lifting. They let me sit in front of the mic and talk to y'all. And so would love to have y'all all along for the ride. If you haven't already subscribed to the channel, we do a video nearly every single day. So we're going to keep the party rolling. We will see y'all next time.